Welcome everyone to episode 15 of the Ethnically podcast. And today I'm joined by George Osei Opong Jr. George, how's it going?
Yeah, good. How you doing, man? Good to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, it's a delight to have you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to meeting you later this week
Yes,
at the Skills Startup Roadshow, which you should definitely shout out on the
yeah,
podcast.
great.
Um, just a little bit about yourself. I know you're founder of HostHelp. You've got a background in sales and
Mm-hmm.
IT, and obviously you sort of developed that interest in entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation today. I just wanted to know, like, how you feeling. Obviously, we're gearing towards the end of the year.
hmm
Lots has happened this year.
hmm
Just a bit of like an early reflection. How are you finding like life in general? The end of the year. What's been on your mind recently?
Um, I'm actually quite excited. Um, I feel like I started this year, with a vision of really growing this company.
Mm,
And I spent the majority of the year just focusing on operation. We had a few bumps last year. So I wanted to really improve our delivery of all of our services. So I kind of went out there and got specialists and stuff in all of our services. And I've just been focusing heavily on that. But I think now that I've kind of come out of that mode, I'm just pretty excited. It still feels like Q1 to me right now. Because of the
mm,
stuff that we got going on, we've got a strong pipeline. The team is excited. That there's like an energy around us at the moment. And yeah, it looks, it's really good. Obviously, personal life wise, yeah, I think everything's been pretty good. I think my focus has just been on business, unfortunately.
mm.
So my family's just had to bear with me there. But yeah, I think we're in a very good space. Like things are very excited right now.
No, indeed. I think it's important to recognize, obviously, like it's important the stuff you're doing in business and in your day to day. But yeah, like I think those sacrifices that you do make when
Yeah,
it comes to like
100%.
sort of family and they're sort of part and parcel of entrepreneurship and sort of your career. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, actually, as we sort of transition into sort of getting into the questions and
hmm
kind of getting to know you as a person and as an entrepreneur, like I mentioned earlier, you've got sort of a background in sales and IT,
Yeah.
right? What kind of sparked the interest in entrepreneurship and setting up your own business?
Um, so I think I just never wanted to do a 9 to 5 forever. I feel like there's a freedom aspect for me. And also I think I think I've always thought about obviously looking after the family, looking after like passing things, pick things down, creating some form of like a Rothschild wealth situation.
Mm,
So I've always thought that I could do that better with having my own business, having my own businesses. And also for me, um, that foundation element is quite big for me. So I've got a foundation that in Ghana where we support local charities, etc. And that's very big for me. But I need a lot of capital to be able, or a lot of resource to be able to do something like that. So there's a few things that kind of motivated it. And I think I've always just wanted to learn how to make money outside of work. And that's just been my focus. Obviously now when I think about it, I could have probably done something similar within IT because IT is quite big. And I could probably earn a personal salary, but at the same time, I think having a company is so interesting because, you get to almost change other people's lives. I've got people that work with us all across the world and I get to learn a lot of different things. And I think if I didn't go on this journey, I would have probably feel like I wouldn't have known at the time, but I would have been missing a part of life that I didn't know about because I think this journey teaches you so much about yourself. It forces you to become the best version of yourself in order to unlock, your true potential. So there's just so much that you learn on this journey that you can't learn in the job, I think anyway. That's just my personal opinion.
no, I can definitely vouch for that. Obviously, given I've started my own entrepreneurial journey earlier this year with Ethnically, um, but I think you're right. You do learn, and it's kind of like that notion of learning things by trying it, learning by doing.
100%.
Like a lot of people, you can learn from a textbook, you can learn from a job, you can learn from people, but there's something about learning from doing it yourself or learning by yourself that kind of is more valuable and just different in a complete different way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I definitely think that kind of obviously translates into sort of career and obviously looking at your career,
hmm
you worked at different companies like IBM, you've had experiences, across a range of different industries as
Mhm.
well. So how would you say those experiences have shaped you as a person, your career, and how have they shaped your approach to business as well? Because it's really interesting knowing sort of the experiences behind why someone sets up their own company.
Yeah, yeah. So I think those that's like you said, I started off in sales, and that was like something I've been into. I wasn't great at it, but I managed to get some sales. I wasn't like the best salesman, but I think when my passion has always been IT, so obviously from young, um, it was, I think it kind of sparked by my dad because he was more on the engineering side. And he used to like taking things apart, people used to call him to come and fix stuff, etc. That kind of sparked from there. So when I entered IT, I think for me, it was more about just learning. I was trying to learn everything that I could. And obviously different companies use the same systems, but in different ways. And in IT, there's a lot of autonomy in IT. And I think that's why I liked it so much because I'm not a traditional employee that likes to be told what to do. I like to be proactive. And I like to have my own freedom to be able to carry out the work that I'm doing. And I think IT gave me that. Um, I think the only reason why I left is because I left the country. Um, and in leaving, obviously I already had HostHelp at the time when I left the country, but I think it just drove me a bit more to want to be free, essentially. Not saying that you're not free when you're working. Obviously, everyone's path is different, but for me personally, I think I value being able to do things my way. And
Yeah.
I might not be a 5 a.m. riser, but I can work throughout the day and I can work at different times as and when, like all of these things. And I try to do that while working as well. But obviously, there's a core hours thing with work, and you have to work within maybe 9 till 6 or wherever. But with what I do, I can do it whenever I want. I can change my schedule. I might say, I can't do this morning. I'm just more in control, and I think that freedom aspect is what I really enjoy. That's very, very important to me. And obviously things like having a son. I remember working in one of these places. I think I was working at the investment bank at the time. And I had a manager, he had a son, and I think he only got like 2 weeks paternity, but it went by so quickly that it was almost like he went and came back and he was, trying to speak to his wife on a daily basis, trying to find out how his son's doing. He's watching his son grow basically through his phone, and he obviously gets only
Mm.
a certain amount of time. And I remember thinking at the time, and that stayed with me. I remember thinking at the time, like, when I have a son, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, those things, it makes you look at life a bit differently.
No, indeed. I think it was really interesting what you mentioned about autonomy actually, because I think I have a, I would say me personally would have a similar perspective on that, but I think also a lot of people. I think we're kind of in a day and age where like people want to be have that autonomy, not just over what they're doing, but their time as well.
Right.
Um, it's really it's such an interesting sort of narrative that's kind of being, I would say, like, developed in sort of this generation and maybe, like, the modern day workplace or the modern day career
Mhm.
path. Like, people wanna set up their own thing. They wanna do something that's, you know, maybe it's a passion project, maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's their social enterprise, maybe it's a business foundation.
Mhm.
It's something that they can that speaks to them more than usual, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, I think, even people that work with me, um, I try to give them that as well. So like we're very task focused instead of time focused because at the same time we run 24 hours. So, or 24/7. So people can come in and go out whenever they please. Like I try to give them that same feeling because I know how it feels to feel like you're kind of like caged in between a certain time. So, we all support each other if somebody, is not around, but like we move around. So yeah, I try to also provide that same thing so that not just me that's getting that.
Mm. Did you have, like, an experience that kinda prompted you wanting to have your more of your autonomy, or was it kinda just sort of built in from, like, a young age? Because I'm really interested in that because I would say I've had experiences that have made me frustrated
Yeah,
and made me wanna do things myself
yeah,
versus kind of like it kind of being brought up in my, like, culture, for example. Because
yeah,
like, there's the stereotypical Asian stereotype of, like, wanting to be a doctor, lawyer,
yeah, yeah.
engineer, and, like, but that hard work's always been instilled in us, but maybe not sort of doing something yourself was,
Fair,
if that makes sense?
fair.
So what was, your experience?
Do you know what? I can't pinpoint one specific thing. I think a large motivator is definitely earning potential. And I think I'm just someone that likes to do different things. So for example, like now, obviously, I'm in the process of building a group of companies. And even from before I started my company, I was already looking into investing. And as you know, investing is not like it's not a one company thing. You tend to kind of see a broader landscape, right? You see like an economic landscape. So I think I've never really been come in every day, do the same thing every day. Um, but my parents were also similar. So like my mom specifically, she was sending money back home. She was like doing so she didn't want to just keep sending money back home to her parents. So obviously she built things that could kind of provide that cash flow. Like something else that big for Ghanaians at the time was that set up taxi businesses and things like that. So my mom was always looking at things that she could do that could provide cash flow for her parents, but also ease the financial, burden of having to send money home every month so that she could also, but she built her house and things like that. So I think there's always been stuff like that that I've seen. And obviously when I was younger, my dad used to take me around to my uncles and aunties, etc. And they all had things going on, like my auntie, she had multiple properties, shops in some of my uncles, they had shops in Peckham, etc. They had shipping companies. So I was always seeing it. And I just thought like, I think over the period of time, like now I'm realizing what was going on then. But
Yeah.
I didn't really grasp it at the time.
Yeah. So it's kind of like unconsciously you were like
Exposed to
seeing
it.
it, but then
Yeah.
yeah, exposed to it. And then when it came to sort of maybe more development in your career, maybe do it like actually sort of just life in general, you kind of develop that sort of instinct yourself, right?
Yeah,
Or is that
exactly.
kind of,
I
yeah,
felt like it kind of came naturally. I think it's like unconsciously came. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. No, that's really cool. I think as well, like linking it back to what you're doing now with Host Help.
Mhm.
First of all, it'd be great to know more about Host Help,
For
what
sure.
the service you're doing. Not just for me, but for listeners that are listening.
Yeah.
And the second sort of part of that question would be thinking about Host Help and sort of supporting ethnic minorities. Is there anything that the business does to support um, those that probably need the service more, or is there? Yeah, maybe it would be great to sort of learn more about Host Help and
Yeah.
its
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. I mean, so it's probably good to give a bit of a backstory. So when we got host help, it was initially, so we bought host help right from the American founder, and it was initially a host and comparison site.
Yeah,
And we quickly realized that a couple of things. One of the things that there was a lot of market research. So that was one thing. The second thing was that it it wasn't a scalable business at the time. So it wouldn't grow past where it was at the time. So we took a big financial risk in essentially turning off the tap on any revenue that was coming in by changing the business multiple times before we got to where it is now. And a lot of the stuff that we built at the time and we built up to now is based on all of our experiences coming in and trying to grow the business. So all of the services that we have now is things that we have tried and tested ourselves. They're not stuff that we're just picking from the sky, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and obviously I kind of built this business and my chairman says it all the time, like you tend to build business for your friends and then eventually build it for other people. So I built this business mainly because I had people also around me that were starting businesses that were trying things. That one of my first clients was a friend of mine, and he was running a production company at the time called Tribe Urban, and he had like multiple domains, etc. But GoDaddy was charging him like a large amount, so he ended up moving over to us. He moved all these domains, all these websites, etc. to us, and obviously we could support him better. But that was my first client,
yeah,
and I think there's not nothing specific that we do to support, but our, you know, I'm black, a lot of my friends are black, a lot of our customers are black. Like it's not by design. It's just, um, I've kind of discovered that not that we need it more, but I wanted to be able to create something that is of an enterprise level, but also startups can use. That's what
yeah,
the simple notion is. So pricing and everything is kind of around being able to fit a budget of someone that maybe has a job, or they have some extra income. Like myself at the time, I bought a business, or I started a business and I wanted to be able to start, build, and scale that business, which is what our philosophy is. So everything that we do, we have different price points based on where you are, but we always try to be flexible on pricing to help people, because my thing is the lifetime value of working with someone and seeing their business start from scratch. Like a friend of mine now, we've just completed his e-commerce build, and he started with us from a domain. From domain, we helped him with his branding. We've now, built his website. He's ready to go. Once he does launch as well, we're helping him market to get his first clients. That's what we do. Um, and I feel like that's what we do best to a degree, but we also help larger companies as well with their marketing, because we can do both. If that makes sense. We just
Yeah.
try to mimic what we do for larger companies for tiny companies, essentially.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a really powerful sort of offering that you have, because being able to obviously I can obviously a lot of what I'm going to say is based on my own
Yeah, of
experience as
course.
well, which I think is useful to sort of highlight, because given that I've set up Ethnically from
Hmm.
scratch only a few months
Hmm.
ago, kind of like there are so many barriers in terms of not just like setting up a website, understanding the sort of technical aspect, marketing,
Hmm.
branding, but even like when I think and speak to other entrepreneurs, there's that sort of knowledge that they don't really
Yeah,
have of around like where do I even start when it
100%.
comes to building what I don't even know how much it's going to cost me. They don't know if they use a service that's more expensive, if there's things that sort of there are other
Hmm.
barriers, sort of barriers to entry. So
Hmm.
I think the service of sort of that offering for startups and being able to sort of tailor your package to whatever's affordable, I think is really
Yeah.
important. It's an important sort of message as well to maybe it's and kind of what you touched on, sort of entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds that kind of they don't just have sort of maybe financial barriers, but also personal
Hmm.
barriers,
Hmm.
things that are holding them back. Do you see that as sort of a layer of of your offering as well? You kind of mentioned it already, but is that something that you kind of really want to focus on, hone in on?
Yeah, definitely. I think as we get bigger, we'll be able to, and this probably sound backwards, but we'll probably be able to drop prices. Um,
Mm.
and within certain, we'll be maybe either create a smaller package or a fraction of a package or whatever it is, um, to be able to support more. Because I think, you know, budget is very difficult, because a lot of businesses can't raise finance. They can't just walk into a bank and be like, I need 50K to build my business, because of a variety of reasons. I'm not a bank. I don't know what the stoppages are, but you would know yourself. It's very difficult. Whereas, for some other people, it might not be, it's probably, but it's mainly because there's an asset there, or there's something else there that, can be a collateral. So there's leverage there. But for us, I think it's quite different. So, you know, I try to always think back to when we started, and with the budget constraints that we had and what did we do. But I also think business is expensive, business is difficult. And I think when you are building a business, you need to be able to somewhat try to get yourself to a point where you have enough traction that if you did want to look at finance or and even if you wanted to get money from your family, if that's a possibility, you can show them something in your numbers that will give somebody the hope to do that. Because I think it's always going to be difficult when you have an idea. If you can't raise some investors, and it's probably a bit more difficult to raise some investors without no track record, no traction, and no real introductions. Because as you know, it's easier to raise finance if you've got some form of introduction or intro right into an investor that can. It's a warm introduction. So yeah, we try our absolute best to tailor and move the budget if we can. And but sometimes it comes about having to restrict some of the things, but there's also a resource allocation cost to these things. So,
Mm.
if I pull a team member away from doing something for a customer that's paying a full price, and I'm giving you a fraction of what we're doing, it can also get a bit messy. So I try to we try to price as best as we can and give as much as we can within the pricing. But at the same time, I think depending on where you're at, sometimes it might just be better to use a freelancer. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to take everybody's money. I'm here to look at the best solution for you. So if it's the thing that maybe you can't afford it right now and you really want to work with us, there's things that you can, use us for. So for example, a domain from us or hosted from us starts from £1.99, but we're going to give you the best hosting that you've ever experienced because that's what we do. It doesn't make a difference for us whether you're paying us £1.99 or £2,000 a month. It doesn't make a difference. We're still going to give you the best service. So but if you wanted to do branding, etc., and the budget wasn't matching, then it might be better to use a freelancer or use a friend and get you to that point where you can. And we're always on hand if there's any questions that people want to ask, or we especially provide free consulting anyway. So if somebody comes and asks us questions, we can give you the roadmap, and you can then come and decide to choose, us or not if you want.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really important sort of message as well you're sending to customers as well, because you don't want to sort of send them away thinking like, oh, we don't want to work with you.
No,
But essentially it's kind of like we feel like we can work with you, but maybe at a later stage. It's kind of, I think as well, you're probably building your pipeline of clients and people that you want to work with
yeah,
for the long term as
yeah,
well. You've got people. I've actually really interesting question. Has there been like a startup or a particular example, right, of someone that you've worked with, and since working with them, they've just gone on to do incredible things with their business. Like they've like sort of been like a stellar example of what your work is, and kind of showcased it to the world. And then if that makes
yeah, there
sense.
definitely is off the top. Raw off the top. Who come on board and done that? Um, we've got over 250 clients, so now I've got to think
Mm.
who's who's
Yes.
really stood out. But I think we've had companies that may not have come to us from the beginning, but have we've been able to help them on their journey. So trying to think that maybe a friend of mine who started a business, and they've been in the business for a while, but they was looking at essentially growing their business. So he's a developer, right? So he was building websites, and he wanted to have one place where he could bring all these websites that he was building. So as he was doing that, because the hosting, his clients could see that the hosting that he was now providing them was a lot better than what he was providing elsewhere. He was able to win more clients doing that, and
Mm.
actually not quit his job, but he was able to how do I explain it? He was able to kind of reduce his time at his work and take on more clients and continue to build. And I think he brought us probably like an extra 10 plus clients based on what he was doing. So that's an interesting example because he's still, I think he's still working now, but he if I'm not mistaken, I feel like he's left his job because he was still working at the time, but I think he's left his job because he's always traveling now. So he's doing his thing. But that was based off us giving him a solid foundation to continue to build what he was doing and being able to generate, I guess, provide his clients with the best service that he could. So that was quite an interesting example.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's powerful, and I think there's always a good example when like they bring in clients and they're able to sort of tell their experience of working with
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
or reinforce that message as well.
Exactly.
No, that is really really important. I did want to sort of move on to sort of more interesting, more personal
Sure, sure.
questions around like running a business, what it can be like, and sort of you mentioned sort of earlier when I asked about how your year's been and how things have been, you kind of like obviously prioritizing business, and maybe it's quite hard to sort of balance with personal
Yeah.
life. And there's obviously this term of work-life balance, which I'm gonna be honest, right? I don't actually like that term
Yeah.
because I feel like it's just life. There is no such thing as work life because work is part of life
Yeah.
and it's
Yes.
it's just your life balance, really. I think the term for me is life balance. So how do you personally balance everything in your life? Like, what are the strategies you use? Because there's gonna be a lot of sort of entrepreneurs, people listening that maybe are struggling to do that and might want to hear what you do and may take some inspiration from that. So
Yeah.
yeah, what are your thoughts?
I feel like it changes at different stages of your journey.
Mm.
I think so obviously when I left the country and I was heavily focused on building a business, I would probably be working the majority of the hours in the day. I was up first in the house and sleeping later after everybody. So that was quite not toxic, but that was quite full on. And I
Yeah.
think as the years have gone and I've kind of understood the business a lot better, I've understood the operations a lot better, and I've improved things going on, my time with family has improved. But I think, and I think you mentioned it earlier, the sacrifice and the trade offs. they kind of happen, but in my experience, they've happened in different stages. But I always try to, I guess, I guess for me it's different because I work at home and
Mm,
um and I can do a lot of work on my phone as well. I can be quite mobile and agile with my time and with my family. And also because I'm fortunate to have a team that kind of do some of the heavy lifting with me, it's very different. Um, yeah, I've just got a unique way of how I do it because I can, like for example, after this call, I can go and spend time with my son. I can break up my
yeah.
days. And I think now what I've done is I tried to so on Mondays, for example, I do a lot of heavy lifting on Mondays. So I tend to group all my tasks and calls on Mondays so that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I can kind of drip seed my week, different things that, I want to prioritize or oversee and stuff in my team and things like that. But it's taken me, it's taken me 3 years to be able to do that. That makes
Mm.
sense.
To have that process, you mean like of sort of working working like
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Is
So
it? Yeah.
to realize what works best, and also to train my team to be able to, do a lot more, and also have time to do what they like. Yeah, it takes a while. Like I said, I spent the majority of this year, about the last 2 months, just focusing on operations. And it took me reading a book called Traction, where it kind of breaks up functions within the business, so like sales and marketing, um it breaks up like your operations and it breaks up like your infrastructure. So now it took me a little while to get my head around it and then looking at how delivery and all those things work. But I had to like restructure my business to work the best way because at some point I was the one dealing with all the clients. So now I was like, okay,
Mm.
some people can do this, you can do that, account manager sets, right? And it took me a while to kind of build out that full, like a core team that can do, all of these little bits that we brought someone to help us with admin, but I don't have to touch the, info, the 40 emails that we spend a lot of time breaking down every function and finding the right person for that function. So that right people in right seats. So it took me, like I said, probably took me longer than 10 months to get there, but taking you 3 years in total to get to a point where, you know, I can decide maybe to not do much work this week and things will still run, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's also kind of like now you're in a more comfortable position. You have that trust with your team as well
100%.
that you've built. You've had that. You've like you meant the key word I feel like is coming out of today's episode is autonomy. You've got that
Yeah,
autonomy to sort of direct that and lead that
yeah,
by example.
yeah.
Um,
100.
what about like when it comes to like switching off from work and like being able to sort of I know you mentioned your son, you mentioned uh family and stuff,
Yeah,
but what like how do you switch off? What are the ways that you kind of because I find when I switch off from work and um, like doing the podcast, doing
mhm,
ethnically, that new ideas just come naturally and things just come more naturally when I get back to
yeah.
it. So what kind of things help you switch off
Um,
from everything?
so I guess an example I can give is probably last weekend. So the weekend I just went. So what I tend to do, and my CFO told me this is kind of like almost like a brain dump on the Friday. Well, he tends to do it every day, but I do it on a Friday. So I have like a brain dump. So my week naturally dips from Friday evening. So I tend to not do I tend to not really do work on the weekend, but I tend to spend time maybe with my son or with my partner as well in the living room. So like, but I'll still have my laptop sometimes because I might want to do
Mm.
one or two things. But I use a sauna as well. So the things that
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like, if I have an idea or whatever and I want to drop a message in a team chat or I want to just mark it down for the week, I just put it there. Because most of the time we're not going to be able to do much on the weekend. And you don't want to start emailing people on the weekend because you have to also be mindful of their time. And there's a few things that I do, and that marking stuff up on the sauna. But then I think because we have 2 sides of our business, we also have a tech that just runs 24. I tend to check in on that stuff during the weekend, but lightly check in because I've got a dev team and they do the bits anyway. But then my team might have questions for me on the weekend, so I'm always ready to answer the questions. But I think I also have control over my time. So I can always say, no, I'll get to that in an hour or so when, we've finished doing this, etc. And I also spend a lot of time with my son because one is just out 4 and he's going to start school next year. So, we've got like charts like ABC, 1 to 3, etc. So we run through that stuff together. So I'm very intentional with the stuff that I do with family. Um,
Yeah.
and I kind of just work around it as much as I can.
It's I did one of my first episodes. I spoke to Linda Atram, who's her like sort of she coined this term like a mompreneur.
Mhm.
So she's obviously a mom,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, supports her kids and everything, but she's an entrepreneur as
yeah,
well. And I really like that term. It's probably like what can we call it, dadpreneur, fatherpreneur. Maybe
yeah.
that's
It,
the
it,
maybe
it doesn't ring that way.
we could, it doesn't sound as good as
Yeah,
mompreneur, but it's kind of like the similar concept, like being able to manage both. And she made a really really interesting insight, which was kind of like the stuff you learn from being a parent, right? Is basically like running your own
yeah,
business. Like you need to learn how to
yeah,
manage people, a kid, managing all these juggling
100%.
priorities, everything.
Yeah.
It's very similar. I really liked how she
And
she
household as
coined that
well.
term.
Like,
And
yeah,
household, yeah. And
as well.
it's very similar to what you're saying, like in terms of your personal experience of managing your time, your life, but also having those priorities and they're equal priorities from your point of view. So no, that is really important. I think it'll be also really good to know like when setting up HostHelp and like the inspirations behind that, right? This is going to be one of my sort of not going to give you a clue right now, but the question you've been given is similar. It's quite related to
Yeah.
this. But when you say like maybe 10 years ago, would you have ever thought you had set up HostHelp? Would you have ever thought like you were in the position you were? And what was kind of like what was the trigger? Like what was the thing that kind of you realized like okay, I'm onto something.
Mm. 10 years ago as well, I was 21 at the time. And I've just started my career. So I'm probably not.
Mm,
I think I was more focused on trying to be the best IT person I could be at that time. And also still trying to, because I think at 21, I was still trying to come out of my teens. So
yeah.
I'm still navigating life at that time. So now I wasn't thinking like that. I think obviously I had been studying and investing probably since like college. So I was learning more and more as time went on. And I think it was always interesting to me because I always wanted to make extra money. Because, I was looking after family as well at the time. My parents, I assisted my parents retiring when I finished college. So, or during the time I was in college. So there was like, lots of responsibilities, I think, as well. So that also kind of prompted me to try, I've bought and sold cars, I've rented out houses, I've done quite a bit. And the town to bring in extra income alongside working. So I think it got to a point where, um, I don't know if maybe I don't know if maybe after having my son in 2020 September, I bought HostHelp in 2021. So I always think that maybe that was also part of it. But I did start a hair care business before then in 2017, where I was, and that was passion led because that was mainly for myself. So I think it's just natural progression to be fair. I
Mm,
feel like I just took everything that I learned from the company that I worked for, big and small, and just kind of wanted to really drive my own thing. I think when I realized that I had something, so in September 2022, um, we started picking up traction. So we started bringing on
mm,
clients, and I left my job to just focus on bringing on clients. And you have to remember at that time, um, I think we were probably making like £20 a month at the time.
mm,
And I'm leaving my job, I'm paying my bills to basically live on £20 a month, which is crazy. But I felt like if I gave more energy to the company at that time, like we could really drive this. So I think it took a couple months. And I think beginning of 2023, we then brought on like with some big clients like Masterwork, Babbel, Blinkist, like we know to do some email marketing for them. And that was a game changer for us. That kind of set the tone for the year. We brought on a business developer the next month. And then we closed about 30, 40 like deals in the summer. So it was a different business then. So it took a year or so to get to that point. But yeah, it was just a leap of faith really, more than anything that this has to work. There's no plan B kind of. Could always go back to corporate, but you know, after working for yourself, going back to corporate is a very
mm.
different
It's very
vibe.
hard. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. And I think like we already sort of touched on sort of that confidence and independence you get of working for
Yeah.
yourself. Um, you mentioned you just mentioned a very, very interesting sort of phrase that I feel like a lot of people it scares a lot of people, right?
Mm.
A leap of faith,
Yeah.
right? It's a leap of right. What if you were giving advice to entrepreneurs, right? Obviously, a leap of faith. Lots of people are taking that leap of faith. They want like we kind of touched on it. Like people want to set up their own businesses now. We're in a day and age where yeah, people don't want that traditional 9 to 5, but at the same time, maybe they wanna do
Mhm.
something, make their own
Mhm.
impact in their own
Mhm.
voice or own way,
Mhm.
right? What what advice would you give to any aspiring entrepreneurs that wanna take that leap of faith and go on their and go on their own entrepreneurial journey? What would you say?
I'm always picky about advice, but I think like it largely depends on your risk appetite. It largely
Mm,
depends on your like not pain tolerance, but I would probably say mental tolerance. Um,
yeah,
because when you start something like with minimal brand awareness, it's very difficult to potentially break into your industry with that. So if you are positioned well, um, you might get a flooding of customers, but you have to kind of be ready for the fluctuations when you start. And it's hard to forecast that stuff. Because when you start, it's exciting, you got your business, you're doing your own thing. What I would always say is, if you can stay in employment, stay for as long as you can. Because, and it's funny because there's two sides to that. One side is the pressure of not having a guaranteed income is very strong. So you know that you need to, pay bills or whatever by the end of the month. And you don't have enough revenue or whatever. It, depend on who you are, it can really drive you to bring in business to get you to that point where you can take some money out of the business. That's one side. The second side is that pressure for some people is not great because they don't know how to handle it. And without having a check that sorts out their bills, they will crumble. So there's two sides to that. So it's always difficult for me to give advice on it because my pain tolerance is extremely like my pain tolerance is higher, my risk tolerance is higher. So I can take risks all day long because I always want to try things. I feel like that's that's
mm,
the scientist in me is I always want to experiment. I always want to try. I want to see how it goes. Um, but for a blanket advice, when you're starting something, if you can stay in employment, and you have money coming in, I would say stay as long as you can while building that thing on the side. And one thing that I've realized with a lot of founders, because I've worked with a lot of founders and startups, is if you start a business and you're the person that knows how to deliver that business, you need to think about bringing somebody else in that you can train to also deliver. Because especially if you're still in employment, you can't, do it kind of 24/7. You can't, um, well, it'll be difficult to, let me not say can't, it'll be difficult to do that. It'll be difficult to deliver by yourself. And you also can't, now I can say can't, you can't scale a business by yourself. Like in terms
yeah,
of, unless if it's tech is different, but even then, as time goes on, there's going to be things you don't know. There's always going to be a limitation at some point, depending on what you do. It's different if maybe you have and it works for different type of businesses. You might be someone that maybe writes books and you can write one book and that keeps you floating for a year or two. Or you might have courses and your courses are, being bought online all the time. So you don't need employees. Businesses that needs employees, I think you need to be able to generate enough revenue as quickly as possible to bring on someone that can then take that to the next level. And you can also
mm,
service a lot more. Because if you're one person, you can do it 5 times at a time. You know, if you bring on another person like yourself, you now have 10 clients, for example.
yeah. So it's kind of like two parted, like the employment side of it and kind of being able to manage whilst you're already building that business. But the second part is kind of, yeah, being able to sort of trust people to scale it for
Yeah.
you whilst you're working or start build. Yeah, I think the main thing I got from that is like you can't scale without building a team or building people around you
Yeah.
that can support those operations and take the business to
Yeah,
the next
100%.
level.
I feel like for me now, if I was working now, know what I know, I could probably stay in employment for a long time and, still be able to continue building a company because I'll just keep hiring more people or I'll keep improving systems that can, streamline and scale the business. Like it's not easy, but if you get it right, it becomes easy.
Yeah, that's true. And this is probably that's like the hard. That's easier said than done if you get it
Hundred
right. But I
percent,
think it's the reward, I guess, after it. Like when you get it right, you feel like you feel like you're on top of the
hundred
world,
percent,
basically.
yeah, 100%,
Um, that's a really powerful sort of way to sort of segment into like the last section
yeah,
of our podcast because I feel like we've spoken about a lot of really interesting things. Obviously, you as a person, your career to
hmm
date, setting up post help, your advice for entrepreneurs. I feel like what you're doing is an incredible service. And if there's anyone, I will get to the part where you get to shout out post help and sort of where people
yes, yes,
can follow you and can get in touch with
yeah,
you.
no problem.
But before that, yeah, I mentioned that you have a question from the last guest of the Ethnically podcast, who was Elliot, who was an actor. He's an actor, playwright, poet,
Okay,
uh, spoken word artist, and he one. I would definitely recommend you to listen to the episode because I feel like there's a lot of sort of synergies in terms of his story.
okay,
He he coined another really interesting term, which is kind of like, why would I let me risk everything to do what I'm really passionate about?
mm,
And I was like,
yeah, I hear
that's
it.
someone who chased his dream and he's living his dream. Um, his question to
Right.
you is, who is your hero?
Whoa, okay. Um, here's my hero. Wow, that's, that's
It's
hard.
a big question.
Yeah, man, be hard for me. Oh man, yeah, you put me in the yeah,
Yeah. I like this part because it gets people like thinking and
thinking.
like people are stressed for like a number of minutes, but
That's a good exercise.
it's a good exercise. Yeah.
Here's my hero. Here's my hero. It's difficult for me, because I feel like there was a time when I looked up to people. But I feel like now I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing that I feel like I find it hard to think about other people. That makes sense. Like
Mm.
aspiring to be. Um,
How about from like a younger age or like or as you were starting out, who was your hero, your role model, inspiration?
so I'll probably say, so there's Warren Buffett one,
Mm.
and I think, and there's not really from a hero perspective, more from like an aspirational perspective. Warren and
Yeah.
I think Warren and Jeff Bezos definitely are the two people that I look at, but I've got a couple based on that because I kind of model my business behavior after them. If that makes sense. So
Mm.
like Warren, Jeff, and Henry Ford, like those are the people that um
Yeah.
I kind of modeled it after. So and I can break that down. So Warren based on the investing side of things and how he looked at businesses, and um, and that's really it. To be fair, there's not much too much to say.
Mm.
I think Jeff on the longevity and how he prioritized customer service, how he um focused on really a lot of R&D, building that business day in day out for 20 plus years. That's really admirable. Henry Ford, I think um for his leadership. So I think I
Mm.
read or heard somewhere that he was like able to not dream things, but he'll have ideas and he'll present it to his team and his team will go on and execute. And I thought that's quite powerful because he was able to kind of push his team because they had a team of engineers. Engineers don't really tend to think past their problem that they can solve. And when
Yeah.
they were saying that um, they couldn't do something, he would just tell them to keep trying, similar to what I guess Elon Musk kind of does now with SpaceX, etc. So yeah, those three are the people that I looked up from an aspirational point. Um, but maybe being younger, right now I can't even think of who a hero would be for me.
Yeah. It's kind of like hero is kind of like I'll say like loose term for like, yeah, role model or inspiration. You
Yeah,
kind of like, I like how you answered it in sort of three different aspects. Like you've got the sort of investing side and how to sort of fund and build a business. You've got um, Henry Ford and sort of like the experimental side and R&D. And yeah, it's really interesting how you kind of like broke that answer. And yeah, there was no like right or wrong answer. It's always up to you.
yeah,
And yeah, you clearly like inspirations are, it doesn't have to be one person. It can be multiple.
yeah.
Um, Elliot actually did ask me who my hero was, and I said Stephen Gerrard because I'm a Liverpool fan.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but I did it for different reasons, like giving his all for everything, no, like a never say die attitude, which obviously I kind of hope to inspire in myself and instill in my work.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh, Elliot, I was going to call you
Yep.
Elliot. George, it's your chance to ask a question
Okay.
to the next. Um, so kind of along the themes of what we've spoken about, but with ethnically, it's always kind of rooted in like diversity, inclusion, getting to know people's experiences, the barriers they overcame,
Hmm.
how they became the person they became today. Obviously, you've set up your own business, so maybe a question around entrepreneurship as well could be a really interesting question. But if you had to provide a question for my next ethnically guest, who would that be? No, what would that question be? Not who would that be?
Um, for okay, and you tend to have business owners on here, right? So, because I want to ask something quite pertinent to that. So, I think, because most people do, have they ever thought of packing up? And if
Ooh,
yes,
okay.
why didn't they?
Oh, okay, that's an interesting question. And to be fair, actually, that question can be tailored
To
regardless if
different,
they're a
yeah, yeah,
business
yeah,
owner or not.
yeah,
Yeah. So I feel like that's a so if they have they ever thought about packing up, so sort of
yeah,
giving up,
yeah.
and then
Putting it a
if
day.
yes, why haven't they? Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
That's nice. It's different as well. We've not had that question before. Every time I ask people to give a question, it's always a different question. We've not had a repeat question yet, which is impressive given that we're 15 episodes
yeah.
in.
No, it is,
Um,
it is.
but no, I really like that question. Next guest, I won't announce. I always do that. I always keep the people wanting to know who the next guest is, so we won't announce that. Um, but I just want to say, George, it's been incredible having you on the
Oh,
podcast
thank you for
today.
having me, man.
Um,
I've enjoyed it.
yeah, I feel like I've got to know you better as a person, but also I feel like your experiences have been really valuable.
Appreciate it.
Not just to me, but I think people listening would have gained a lot, particularly aspiring entrepreneurs, those who've got their own
Yeah,
business, like you mentioned, would have gained a lot from that. If they want to get in touch with you
yeah.
and learn more about HostHelp, where can they do that?
So probably the two places probably best. So HostHelp.net, that's our website. And all of our services and platforms are on there. And just find me on LinkedIn, by my name, George Osei Opong Jr. Yeah, it's easy to find me on LinkedIn with that.
Amazing. No, definitely get in touch if anyone has any questions or
Definitely.
wants to use HostHelp as a service.
Yes.
George, like I said, it's been amazing having you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to meeting you
Yes.
later this
This week.
and yeah, just everyone stay tuned for the next
Thank you
episode.
for having me, man.